Welcome back to Movies on the Brain. I'm Jason. Today we're diving into something that's equal parts ancient myth and unsettling reimagination with The Carpenter's Son. Written and directed by Lofty Nathan and starring Nicolas Cage, F.K. Twigs, Noah Jupe, and Suhelia Suhela Yacob. This film blends religion, supernatural fear, and psychological tension into a story rooted in apocryphal scripture. The Carpenter's Son drops its characters into a world where faith, doubt, and otherworldly forces collide in unexpected ways, building an atmosphere that's eerie, introspective, and just a little bit disturbing. Let's take a look at The Carpenter's Son and see how this bold, controversial take on ancient lore unfolds. The Carpenter's Son had a limited theatrical release on November 14th, 2025, and had a budget of $10 million. During its one-week theatrical release, it earned $141,193 domestically and $3,062 internationally, making a worldwide total of $144,255. Its opening weekend saw it earn $96,081, finishing number 28 in the box office behind the likes of Black Phone 2, Regretting You, Predator Badlands, 2025's The Running Man, and Now You See Me, Now You Don't. Numbers 5 through 1, respectively, with The Running Man and Now You See Me and Now You Don't opening the same weekend. The rest of its limited theatrical run saw it earn $45,112, finishing its box office run at number 28. Now, unfortunately, there's not very much of the plot that I could find. Here's what I was able to find. As Roman soldiers carry out the massacre of infant boys, Joseph and Mary flee with their newborn son to avoid execution. The family survives by living in secrecy, moving far from Judea, and settling in a remote village in Roman-occupied Egypt, where they attempt to live anonymously under Joseph's strict guidance. Years later, Jesus is a teenager growing up under constant rules meant to keep him hidden. Joseph enforces obedience and caution, fearing discovery, while Mary is more compassionate but still withholds the truth about her son's identity. Jesus grows frustrated with the confinement, feeling isolated from the other villagers and increasingly suspicious that his parents are concealing something fundamental about who he is. He becomes fascinated with Lilith, a local girl, and his curiosity about human relationships and desire begins to clash with his parents' expectations. A mysterious young woman known only as the Stranger appears and gradually gains Jesus' trust. She speaks to him with familiarity and understanding, encouraging him to question Joseph's authority and explore his own nature. As Jesus spends more time with her, he begins to experience visions and discovers that he possesses extraordinary abilities. When these powers manifest, they are uncontrolled and frightening, resulting in violent and supernatural incidents that unsettle the village. As fear spreads among the villagers, suspicion turns toward Jesus and his family. Joseph attempts to further suppress his son's ability, believing that restraint is the only way to keep him safe, while Mary struggles with guilt over the secrecy surrounding Jesus' origins. Eventually, the truth of Jesus' identity is revealed to him, which only deepens his inner conflict. He is overwhelmed by anger, fear, and confusion, torn between obedience, resentment, and a temptation to assert control over his power. Stranger's influence grows more overt, pushing Jesus towards rebellion and the use of his abilities without restraint. It is ultimately revealed that the stranger is Satan, who has been manipulating Jesus as a part of a test meant to corrupt him and turn him away from compassion. The film culminates in a confrontation between Jesus and Satan, framed as his first direct encounter with evil and temptation. Rather than destroying Satan, Jesus chooses restraint and mercy, rejecting violence and domination despite his immense power. This decision marks a defining moment in his moral development and signals the path he will ultimately follow. The film ends with Jesus accepting his identity while remaining bound to humanity, having chosen compassion over fear and control. Now let's look at the cast and some of their other roles they've had. Nicolas Cage as the Carpenter. Other roles for Nicolas Cage include Ben in Gunslingers, Superman and Teen Titans Go to the Movies, and Speckles in G-Force. Noah Jupe as the boy. Other roles for Noah Jupe include Andy Dyer in And Sons, Hamlet in Hamnet, and Peter Miles in Ford v Ferrari. F.K. Twigs as the mother. Other roles for F.K. Twigs include Shelley in 2024's The Crow, M in Brighton Beach, and the Shy Girl in Honey Boy. Isla Johnston as the stranger. Other roles for Isla Johnston include Beth Harmon in the TV miniseries The Queen's Gambit, Lucy Spencer in the TV show Invasion, and 10-year-old Ursula in the TV show Life After Life. Suhaila Jacob as Lilith. Other roles for Suhaila Jacob include Saraya Dogan in the TV show No Man's Land, Shisha Klee in Dune Part 2, and Lou in Climax. Penelope Marco Paulu as Lilith's mother. This is Penelope Marco Paulu's only American role so far. Orestes Paliadelis as the teacher. This is Orestes Paliadelis' only American role so far. Just a heads up before I begin my review proper, I won't be calling the characters who they're listed as I just mentioned in the cast. I'll be using their names of who they're portraying. I like that right off the bat. After the opening production cards and all, even before the title pops up, that they're telling you it's based on the apocryphal infancy gospel of Thomas, and that the apocryphal writings were done by early Christians. I also like that we're not thrust right into the story we were shown in the trailers, and that we get the birth of Jesus. The score behind the scene is a bit unsettling though, which I think is the point because at that time we don't really know what's going on. And I'll be honest, I did learn something new. And it was only about 5 minutes into the film. Anno Domini is the full form of AD, which I honestly thought it meant after death, but Anno Domini is Latin for in the year of the Lord. It gets dark and quick, literally showing the burning of a newborn baby. I literally had to pause the movie for a little bit after that. It was really hard to watch. Getting one of the scenes shown in one of the trailers less than 10 minutes in shows me that they didn't show a whole lot in any of the trailers, since the particular scene shown is, at least in parts, in all the trailers I saw for this. And most of the main quote in the first full trailer is said right after we see the title card. I actually really enjoy the film so far, except for that scene I mentioned earlier that I had to pause it for. Nicolas Cage is really selling me on his role in this. I like the change in the score when Isla Johnston's character shows up. It shows that she's evil without her even having said a word. They play up the kind of man Noah Jupe, who is playing Jesus, is supposed to be, with him being able to focus on someone and hear them clearly despite being far from them, and Jupe's expression is very telling about how perceptive he is. Lilith's mother telling Mary that her and Jesus don't look alike was a nice way to hint at what's going on with him. I do like that the core three, which is F.K. Twigs, Nicolas Cage, and Noah Jupe, seem like fairly grounded characters, even if Joseph, Nicolas Cage's character, seems high-strung and nervous. This is marketed as a horror movie, and I'm sure it comes later. Hint, it really doesn't, except for that opening scene. But the only truly scary thing about this movie 20 minutes in is the chanting in the scene I mentioned earlier. I'm not sure what language the chanting is in, but it's pretty unsettling. Other than that, it's leaning more towards a thriller in my opinion. Jesus having a nightmare about his crucifixion wasn't what I expected, but wow, that's a pretty powerful scene, and the trailer did a great job at misdirecting expectation for the scenes shown. When Jesus locks eyes with Satan as she's hanging from the tree, the slight distortion of the score was a nice touch to again tell us that she's not to be trusted. That's before a single conversation with her, which is really good storytelling, in my opinion. I really do like the chemistry between Isla Johnston and Noah Jupe in their first scene together. That scene was actually really well done with them and the leper. Unless I missed it in the trailer, the crown of thorns and the nightmare Jesus has of his resurrection is a nice touch for those who don't think it's about Jesus. Again, with the chemistry thing, Nicolas Cage and Noah Jupe have really great chemistry in this. It's really fun to watch. The leper coming back and being somewhat healed is a great way to show that something great way to show something that's known from reading the Bible, just showing it earlier than what's said in the Bible. Again, on the chemistry thing, FK Twigs and Nicolas Cage have really good chemistry. I honestly wouldn't mind seeing them in more films together. Isla Johnson's facial expressions as the leper is eating the fruit is creepy but filmed so well. I had a feeling the leper wouldn't live much longer, but the portrayal of what happened to him is insane makeup work. They're doing a great job at hinting Isla Johnston's character as Satan, which those of us who are unfamiliar with the Bible already know who are familiar with the Bible, excuse me, already know that's who she's supposed to be. With Lilith, the horror finally gets ramped up a little bit with her biting her own mother's ear. Score was intense, and while it was a frantic scene, it was well shot. I wonder if they were hinting at Mary and Joseph know what will come of Jesus with the line that Mary says of we must deliver him to his task. It would show that's great foreshadowing. The scene of Satan and Jesus at the place where men and Lilith are being tortured is such a powerful scene. They almost misdirect you that Satan isn't evil, which is incredible acting by Isla Johnston. Then we almost get the reveal we get in the trailer that her character is actually Satan. Great scene. It's easily the best one in the film so far, and probably the whole film if I'm being completely honest. The supernatural like effect they added to Lilith's voice when Jesus goes to talk to her to kind of hint what happened to her earlier when she was kidnapped and then attacked her mother was a nice touch. I'm really not familiar with Orestes Paliadelis, but I wanted to look him up after seeing him here. And it seems he's a Greek actor just from his role as the teacher. I can see why they chose him for the role. He's an imposing and intimidating man because of his stature, and his eyes are very commanding. Jesus tells the teacher about how long he will live. Telling the teacher about how long he will live shows how he's coming into his power of being all knowing. I just wish we'd have seen that scene instead of it being told in a scene right after. The makeup used to show the boils on Lilith is gross, but it leads to a really neat scene of the snake coming out of her mouth. I'm surprised it took nearly an hour into the film to get that scene from the trailer. I'm really surprised in the second half of the film is what most of the trailers for this film is from. It's actually incredible storytelling too, I think. I mean, I would be just like Joseph if the same things happened and I were in his shoes. Jesus finally learning the truth from Joseph on who his father is after Joseph was bitten by what looked like a viper. I couldn't really tell because it was dark. Similar to the one he pulled out from Lilith's mouth, then healing the wound, I think is what finally made Joseph realize what Mary had said in the scene where when her and Joseph were fighting about after Jesus took off. I like that they're flat out telling us that Satan is one of God's most beautiful angels, which is what was said in the Bible. So it seems they're intertwining both what's in the Bible plus what's in the apocryphal text, and I feel like it's done in a tasteful way. The fact that the whole torment me part in the trailer is done in the third act of the film and how powerful that scene is just incredible work by everyone involved, especially Noah Jupe. To see what's happening to Jesus happen to Mary at the same time really drives home how much she cares for him. I definitely didn't see Joseph getting stabbed and dying though, and telling Jesus to forgive Satan. It's actually a really powerful scene watching it. final scene between Satan and Jesus after Joseph dies, her telling him that he will die for people who will not thank him, is actually a real poignant way to end the film. And then when you see Mary and Jesus walk off into the sunset. Overall, I quite enjoyed it. While it does have its horror elements, it's definitely more of a thriller film than it is a horror film. It's definitely worth checking out at least once. Now for some fun facts and trivia. Nicolas Cage was attacked by bees while filming this movie. Nicolas Cage told his agent to find the closest script to a Robert Eggers movie, as Cage was offended by Eggers' remarks that he can't see Cage fitting in his movies. The movie takes place in Egypt, and its writer and director, Lofty Nathan, is an Egyptian Christian. Excuse me. The announcement of the film was met by public anger in Egypt, with Muslims and Christians finding it offensive to the Holy Family. Egyptian authorities denied permission for the shooting, so the production was moved to Greece. The original language of the infancy Gospel of Thomas scripture is Greek. Joseph's description as a tecton has been translated into English as carpenter. The Greek word appears in both Matthew 13:55 and Mark 6:3. And that brings us to the end of The Carpenter's Son. For me, this landed as an above average experience, not something that completely floored me, but genuinely held my attention and gave me a lot to think about. What really stood out was how it weaves together both the apocryphal text with elements drawn directly from the Bible, blending the familiar with the unsettling in a way that feels deliberate and thought-provoking. It doesn't play it safe, and it doesn't offer easy answers. That willingness to explore faith from multiple angles is what gives it its weight. This is Movies on the Brain. I'm Jason, and I'll see you next time somewhere between belief and uncertainty.